How's your week so far, Zalman?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good, thank God. I'm enjoying the sub 100 weather, so it's nice.
Yeah, for
Also
change.
trying to cram in everything that needs to happen before the end of the year so that I don't have too much stress on my head after the baby, but I probably will anyway.
Yeah, I think five little children is probably considered stressful.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so why does my phone keep buzzing? I'm not sure. I don't think anyone's trying to get in. Chaim's here somewhere. And here we go. There's Chaim, and then I don't know what happened to Brett, but she should be here in a second anyway.
Getting close to the day, huh? Another 2 weeks or so, or a month.
We got another 2, 3 weeks, the 11th or the 14th, depending on how you count. And yeah, not a lot of time. We're gonna start with the blessing that we make before we learn Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiyanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu al rei Torah. Okay. Here's Brett's back. Okay. Back to the subject of Zimun, the invitation. The Gemara asks, until where does the Zimun blessing extend? At what point until what point do you need three people? Remember, we said you need three men in order to say the Zimun, and the question is, until when do you need those three people? Do you need those three people to all be stationary and to all be there until the end of the entire grace after meals? Or perhaps the third guy can go back into the marketplace earlier. So the Gemara asks, until where does the Zimun blessing extend? Rav Nachman says the blessing extends only until let us bless, which means that you only need three people for the actual invitation. And then once you start grace after meals, you no longer need three. Rav Shesha says that the Zimun blessing extends until the end of the first blessing of grace after meals, the blessing called who feeds all. The Gemara proposes, let us say that this Amoraic dispute is parallel to the dispute between Tanaim. Let's take a quick refresher. Does anyone remember what is the difference between a Tana and an Amora?
Don't remember. Did we cover that?
We have.
I don't remember.
It's an important refresher. That's why I think we'll do this again. Amora, they're all sages who learned in the yeshiva, great scholars. And the difference in their name is depending on what time period they lived in. The sages from the time of the Mishnah are called Tana in singular or Tanaim in plural. The sages from the time of the Talmud are considered Amora in singular or Amoraim in the plural. Whose words hold more weight? A
Well,
different
the
question.
Mishnah came after the Talmud, right?
Oh, so that's a good question. Based on that question is going to be of course, the answer. So the Talmud is an explanation and a broader conversation discussing the Mishnahs. So what came first?
So the Mishnah came
Mishnah.
first.
The
That's what I
Mishnah came
thought.
first.
Mishnah came first, so there would be greater weight.
Exactly. The Mishnah came first, therefore the Tanaim are superior, and their words hold more weight. The Amoraim are the sages of the Talmud, and that comes after the Mishnah, therefore their word is binding, But if there's ever a disagreement, I mean, they're not allowed to disagree with the Tanaim. So one thing that you'll often find in the Talmud is that when you'll have a disagreement between Amoraim, they'll try to say, hey, let's look at a different disagreement that we have already from the previous generations, from the sages of the time of the Mishnah, the Tanaim, and see if maybe we can parallel the dispute that we're having now with a previous dispute that has happened many years ago. As one Brisa taught, Brisa is also from the sages of the time of the Mishnah, but it was not codified as part of the book of the Mishnah. There were notes that were written down that are authoritative, but not as authoritative as the Mishnah, yet still from the Tanaim. One Brisa taught, grace after meals is 2 and 3 blessings. Another Brisa taught, grace after meals is 3 and 4 blessings. So what does that mean? Let's unpack this. In attempting to understand these conflicting brisas, the sages assumed that everyone agrees that the last blessing, the 4th blessing, who is good and does good, the 4th blessing of grace after meals, is not required by Torah law. I don't like the way that they use Torah law instead of biblical, but that's the translation we have here. Is not by biblical law. The reason why is because that blessing was established after the Jewish people were allowed to to come and bury the dead of Beitar, which is a long story in and of itself. I don't remember if we're going to get there soon or not. But that was instituted by the sages later on. So there are 4 blessings in our modern day grace after meals. The 4th one we know is not required by Torah law. So the question is, what are the 2, what are the 3, and what are the 4? The first Brisa said that the grace after meals is 2 and 3 blessings. And the other Brisa said that grace after meals is 3 and 4 blessings. So what's going on? Let's see. What then? Is it not that they disagree about this exact argument? The one who says that grace after meals is 2 and 3 blessings hold that the Zimun blessing extends until the end of the first blessing, who feeds all. Therefore, if there is a Zimun, 3 blessings are recited, because you have the Zimun blessing that encapsulates the first blessing, then you have the second blessing and the third blessing. If there is no Zimun, only 2 blessings are recited, since the blessing who feeds all, the first blessing, is not recited. And the one who said that grace after meals is 3 and 4 blessing holds that the Zimun blessing extends only until let us bless, which is the invitation itself, and includes no part of grace after meals itself. Therefore, if there is a Zimun, 4 blessings are recited, which is the 3 blessings of grace after meals plus the blessing of the Zimun, while if there is not, only 3 blessings are recited. This explanation distinguishing between the 2 brises is rejected and says that you're not reading this correctly. No, you cannot say that this is the explanation down here, because those brises can both fit according to both opinions down here. What do we mean by that? Rav Sheshes will explain and give an answer in accordance with his reasoning, Rav Nachman will explain in accordance with his reasoning, and Rav Sheshes will explain this in accordance with his reasoning. Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes are the Amoraim, the sages of the Talmud, of the discussion at hand, whether the Zimun extends until the end of the first blessing or not. Rav Nachman explains in accordance with his reasoning, saying, everyone agrees that the Zimun blessing extends only until let us bless, meaning that it's only until the actual end of the invitation. And according to the one who said that grace after meals is 3 and 4 blessings, this works out well, just like we explained before, that if there is a Zimun, you add an extra blessing before, which is the blessing of the invitation. And if there is no invitation, then you have the 3 blessings of the grace after meals. And the one who said that grace after meals is 2 and 3 blessings could have said to you, here we are dealing with the blessing recited by laborers. As the master said, and we learned this many months ago, that when a laborer is working, he is permitted to abridge the grace after meals, And he begins with the blessing who feeds all, and includes the third blessing who builds Jerusalem in the context of the second blessing, the blessing of the land. So when he says that there's two blessings or three blessings, then what he means is like this. We're talking about day laborers who are making only two blessings in the grace after meals. The second and third blessing are joined together. So if there is a zimun, if there are three men and they're making a zimun, the invitation becomes a third blessing. And if not, they only have two blessings. It's a good answer. Rav Sheshes explains in accordance with his reasoning, everyone agrees that the zimun blessing extends until the end of the blessing who feeds all. According to the one who said that grace after meals is 2 and 3 blessings, this works out well. That if you have a zimun, you will recite all three blessings, and if you have no zimun, you skip the first blessing. And the one who said that grace after meals is 3 and 4 blessings holds that the blessing who is good and does good is required by biblical law. The fourth blessing is required by biblical law. And therefore, if you have a zimun, you will say the first blessing, the second blessing, the third blessing, and the fourth blessing. And if you have no quorum of 3, you will skip the first blessing and say only the second, the third, and the fourth. Okay. I apologize. Give me just a second. Someone's knocking on the door. I'll be right back.
All right, Paul, how you feeling?
Oh, I'm better. I'm healed.
Yeah, you did.
Oh.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you guys so much for the work. I apologize.
Oh,
Okay. They said they were coming 11:30. They came early, but it's good. Okay. With regard to the matter of the blessing itself, who is good and who does good, Rav Yosef said, you should know that the blessing who is good and does good, that's the, I think, paragraph 7, the long paragraph on the second side of the benching of the grace after meals in the papers that we use here at Chabad. Know that the blessing who is good and does good is not required by biblical law. How do we know that? Because laborers who are reciting grace after meals at work are eliminating it. If they are eliminating it, it cannot be that it is a biblical obligation. Because if it's a biblical obligation, then just because you're working for someone else doesn't mean you're exempt. The same thing we see by prayer, that the biblical obligations of prayer, everyone has to say, but in extraneous circumstances, one can skip some of the elements of prayer that are rabbinic in nature. Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta said another proof in the name of Rav. Know that the blessing who is good and does good is not required by Torah law. How do we know? As one who recites it begins to recite it with blessed, but does not conclude reciting it with blessed. This is the formula in all comparable blessings. as it was taught in our brisa. All blessings, one begins reciting them with blessed and concludes reciting them with blessed, except the blessings over fruit, the blessings over mitzvahs. I don't know why he says only fruit, any kind of food. Blessings over fruit, blessing over mitzvahs, and a blessing that is juxtaposed to another blessing, and the final blessing after Shema. Because among these, there are some that the one who recites it begins reciting it with blessed, but does not conclude with blessed. And there are among these blessings, I thought we were in the middle of a sentence. And there are among these blessings that one who recites it concludes reciting it with blessed, but does not begin reciting it with blessed. However, the blessing who is good and does good begins with blessed, but does not conclude with blessed. This proves by inference that it is an independent blessing. In other words, in the Amida, for example, the Amida the first blessing begins and ends with blessed, but the rest of the blessings only end with blessed because they are adjacent to each other. So the blessing of the end of the previous blessing counts for the beginning of the next blessing. However, and we have the same thing in the first three blessings of the grace after meals. The first blessing begins with blessed and ends with blessed. The second one does not begin with blessed because it is adjacent to the first blessing. And the third blessing also does not begin with blessed. And then the fourth blessing begins with blessed, showing that it is independent. I just remembered something that I want to make sure to tell them. So I apologize. I'm going to come right back in a second. I'm sorry about that. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak said another proof. You should know that the blessing who is good and who does good is not required by Torah law, by biblical law, as it is eliminated in the house of mourning. I didn't know that. As it was taught in a brisa, according to the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Okay, so according to the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, it is eliminated in the house of mourning. What do they say in the house of the mourner? Blessed who is good and who does good. That's the author of the initial or the first author of the Mishnah just writes that they do the regular blessing who is good and who does good. Rabbi Akiva says that is not appropriate in the house of mourning. Rather, we should say, blessed is the true judge. The first opinion in the Brisa is challenged. They would say who is good and who does good. Yes, that is recited in the house of the mourner. However, blessed be the true judge, no, is not recited. That can't be, because one of the main things that we say to a mourner or when in mourning is blessed is the true judge. Rather say who is good and does good is recited as well. Of course, we're saying blessed is the true judge, but we're also saying who is good and who does good. The Gemara recounts a story. Mar Zutra happened to come to Rav Ashi's home when an incident of mourning befell Rav Ashi. Mar Zutra began a combined blessing and said, who is good. So he combined both blessed is the true judge and who is good and who does good. And this is what he said. Who is good and does good, God of truth, the true judge, who judges with righteousness, takes away with justice, and is the ruler of his world to do in it as he wills, as all his ways are just. That all is his, and we are his people and his servants, and in everything we are obligated to thank him and blessing. Who repairs the breaches in Israel, he will repair this breach in Israel for life. So we see over here that Mar Zutra included both who is good and does good, as well as mourning and acceptance of divine justice. Returning to the original topic, it was mentioned above that one interrupts his meal to form a zimun with two others who finished eating. If there were two people who finished eating, then the third one has to stop and wait for them to do their grace after meals. The question is raised, to where does he return when he finishes his own meal and must begin to recite his own grace after meals? Rab Zvid said in the name of Abaya, he returns to the beginning and recites the entire grace after meals. And the rabbis say he returns to the place that he stopped. And the halacha is he returns to the place that he stopped, which is the beginning of the second blessing. On the topic of meals, the Gemara relates the following story. The exilarch said to Rav Sheshes, although you are elderly sages, the Persians are more expert than you with regard to the required etiquette at meals. The Persian customs is that when there are two, what were they called? Divans? Divans. When there are two divans on which they would recline, the greater of the two people reclines first, and the person second to him in importance reclines on the divan above him, alongside his head. When there are three divans, the greatest of the three reclines on the middle divan, the one second to him in importance reclines on the divan above him by his head, and the third one to him in importance reclines on the divan below the greatest of the three. Rav Shesha said to the exilarch that custom is flawed. If the greater one wishes to speak with the second one to him in importance, who is reclining above his head, he must straighten up and sit, and only then will he be able to speak to him. The exilarch answered, the Persians are different, as they signal and communicate with hand gestures, especially during meal times, so there is no need to sit up. Interesting. Because they had sign language that they used to speak. So, if the exilarch is saying that the Persians are great, so Rav Sheshes asked the exilarch about the Persian practice with regard to the first waters washing their hands before they ate. When washing their hands before the meal, from where did they begin? The exilarch said to him, they begin from the greatest, which means that the greatest among them first washes his hands. Rav Sheshes asked, if that is so, should the greatest person sit and keep his hands clean and wait while everyone is washed so that all may be served? The exilarch said to him, they bring him his table immediately. That's funny. As the custom was that each person ate at his own private table, and they brought the table before the greatest person present immediately after he washed, so that he need not wait for the others. So a table in Aramaic is called a taka, or these little table that they would put the food in. Does anybody know how you call food in Australian?
Australia.
Taka. Tucker. Taka is a common slang for food.
For what?
Food in Australia is called taka.
Mm-hmm.
And canteen over there. In America, you have a little shop, or if there was a store that sold food in school, was called a canteen. In Australia, it's called a tuck shop. Because they sell.
Well, canteen usually has a military connotation to it.
In terms of like in the kitchen.
Well, a canteen would be like a shop on a military base where they sold sundries.
Interesting. So what did they call the if there was a school lunches, if they weren't providing school lunches, but there was an option for paid lunch, what was that kitchen called?
Cafeteria.
The cafeteria. There we go. So what in Australia, what in America is called a cafeteria in school, we used to call it tuck shop.
Hmm.
Anyways, we digress. So in the Persian custom, the greatest of them washes his hands first. And Rav Sheshes asked, well, then why should he have to sit and wait? Let him wash his hands last. And Rav Sheshes answered, and the Exilarch answered that over there they would bring him his food immediately. He could begin eating. Rav Sheshes asked the Exilarch about the Persian practice with regard to the final waters. When washing hands after the meal, from where do they begin? The Exilarch said to him, they begin with the least significant of the attendees. Rav Sheshes says, if so, should the greatest person sit with dirty hands until everyone finishes washing their hands? The Exilarch said to him, they do not remove the table from before him until the water reaches him, so he could continue eating, while everyone else's tables has been removed from them and they are washing their hands. Rav Shesha said to him, very nice that you're telling me all of this about the Persians. I don't know about the Persians, but in terms of conduct at a meal, all I know is a brisa. As a brisa, as it was taught, what is the order of reclining? When there are two divans up which they would recline, the greater of the two people reclines first, and the person second to him in importance reclines on the divan below him. When there are three divans, the greatest of the three reclines first on the middle divan. The one second to him in importance reclines on the divan above him, and the one third to him in importance reclines on the divan below the greatest of the three. The first waters before the meal, they begin with the greatest person present. The final waters, when they are 5 people, they begin with the greatest person present. When they are more than that, even 100, they begin the final waters with the least significant of the attendees until they reach the 5 greatest present, at which point they return and begin with the greatest present. And to the place that the final waters return, the blessing also reverts. And the greatest present among the final 5 to wash his hands is the one who recites grace after meals. This brisa supports the opinion of Rav, as Rabbi Chia bar Ashi said in the name of Rav, whoever washes his hands first at the end of the meal is designated to recite the grace after meals. Similarly, the Gemara relates that Rav and Rabbi Chia were seated at a meal before Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said to Rav, stand and wash your hands. We learned this before. Rabbi Chia saw that Rav was trembling in fear that perhaps he had conducted himself improperly during the meal and therefore had to wash his hands. And Rabbi Chia said to him, son of nobleman, he is saying to you to go and review your grace after meals, as the first to wash his hands after the meal is the one who is honored with leading the blessing. The Gemara continues to discuss the topic of washing after a meal. The sages taught, although it is customary to defer to great people, nevertheless, one shows deference neither on roads nor on bridges. Nor with regard to dirty hands, i.e. with regard to washing hands at the end of the meal. We're going to explain soon. The Gemara recounts, Ravin and Abaye were traveling along the road on donkeys. Ravin's donkey preceded Abaye's, and Ravin did not say to Abaye, let the master go first. Abaye said to himself, ever since this one of the sages Ravin ascended from the west, from Eretz Yisrael, he has become arrogant. When they reached the door of the synagogue, Ravin said to Abaye, let the master enter first. Abaye said to him, until now was I not master? Why do you only begin deferring to me now, but did not do so while we were traveling? Ravin said to him, Rabbi Yochanan said to the following, one only defers to those greater than he at a doorway that has a mezuzah, as only there is it appropriate to allow him to go first. The Gemara challenges, a doorway that has a mezuzah, yes, one defers, and a doorway with no mezuzah on it, one does not defer? If so, a synagogue or study hall that is not required in a mezuzah, and so if there is one that does not have a mezuzah, there too does one not defer at their doorways? Rather say that this is the principle. One only shows deference at a doorway whether it is worthy of affixing a mezuzah, but not on a road or a bridge or a bathroom. The Gemara continues with the subject of deferring to one superior during a meal. Rav Yehuda, the son of Rav Shmuel bar Shelah, said in the name of Rav, those reclining at a meal may not eat anything until the one breaking bread has tasted the bread. Rav Safra sat and said, may not taste was stated by Rav and not may not eat. The Gemara asked the question that you probably might all be thinking. What is the difference whether Rav said taste or eat? The Gemara explains that there is no difference, and Rav Safra's insistence teaches us that one must say what he was taught in the precise language employed by his teacher without altering a single detail. It's a good message. The Gemara continues to discuss the subject of honors during a meal. The sages taught 2 people who are eating from a single dish must wait for each other. But if there are 3, everyone eats when he wishes, and they need not wait for each other. Generally, the one who breaks bread extends his hand to take food first, but if he wishes to defer to his teacher or to one who is greater than he has permission to do so. The Gemara tells us a story. Rav Bar Chana was engaging in preparations for his son's wedding in the house of Rav Shmuel Bar Katina. He arrived early and sat and taught his son the halachos of the meals. The one who breaks bread may not break bread until Amen has ended from the mouths of those responding. Rav Chisda said one only need wait until Amen has descended from the mouth of the majority of those responding, but if there are some people who said Amen late, then he doesn't have to wait for them. Rami Bar Chama said to him, what is the difference regarding the majority that one must wait until their Amen ends before proceeding? That until then the blessing has not yet been considered concluded. If so, when the Amen of the minority has not yet ended as well, the blessing has not yet concluded. Why doesn't the one breaking bread need to wait all the way until everyone has finished saying Amen? Rav Chisda said to him, because I say that anyone who answers Amen in an excessive duration is merely mistaken. In other words, he's saying anyone, when you say the blessing, everyone responds Amen. But if you have someone who wants to feel very holy about themselves, and they say, Amen, do you have to wait for that guy to finish saying Amen until you break the bread? And Rav Chisda said, no, you don't, because that guy is mistaken in saying a long Amen. With regard to answering Amen, the sages taught one should not respond with an abbreviated Amen, in which the first syllable is not properly enunciated, with a truncated Amen, in which the second syllable is not properly enunciated, or an orphaned Amen, in which the respondent is unaware of the blessing to which he is responding. Similarly, one should not quickly and indifferently discharge a blessing from his mouth. Ben Azai says, anyone who recites an orphaned Amen, his children will be orphaned. Oive. An orphaned Amen is an Amen that doesn't have a connection to a blessing, just randomly saying Amen. One who recites an abbreviated Amen without paying attention, his days will be abbreviated and incomplete. One who recites a truncated Amen, his days will be truncated. One who extends his Amen, they will extend his days and years for him. Nonetheless, one should not prolong it extensively. Returning to the matters of the Zimun invitation, the Gemara relates, Rav and Shmuel were sitting at a meal when much later Rav Shimi Bar Chia arrived and was hurrying to eat. Rav said to him, what is your thinking? Are you rushing in order that you could join together with us for Zimun? We have already eaten. We finished our meal before you got here. Shmuel said to Rav, we have not really finished our meal. As if they brought me truffles or a young pigeon for Abba, which is Rav. Would we not eat it? Since we would still eat, we have not yet finished our meal, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Achia can join us in the Zimun. Rav's students were sitting at a meal when Rav Acha entered. The student said, a great man has come who can recite the blessing on our behalf. Rav Acha said to them, do you think that the greatest recites the blessing? This is not so. Rather, one of the main participants who was present from the beginning of the meal is the one who recites the blessing. The Gemara concludes that the halacha, however, is that the greatest person recites the blessing even if he arrived at the end of the meal. Okay. Next conversation. You guys ready for next conversation?
No, the original question was if Zimmer has three people, do the three people have to stay for the entire prayer? And that's where we started off, right?
That is where we started off. Yes,
And that question just seemed to get abandoned altogether.
it did. It did get abandoned. However, based on what we learned, we can answer that question. Does anybody want to take a crack at it?
I mean, well, who eats first and who washes their hands first? What does that have to do with whether or not you still need three people to complete the prayer?
That has ADHD can got to do with it. Um, in other words, that was because we got sidetracked.
Okay.
But in the context, we kept on discussing whether the zimun extends only until the end of the zimun, or whether it extends until the end of the first blessing. So to over here, with regards to this question, I believe the answer would be the same, that there would be two opinions. One holds that he has to stay only until the end of the invitation, with the other opinion, which seems to be the accepted opinion, is that he has to stay until the end of the first blessing.
And
Which
that
is why
kind
he was, sorry?
of makes me think about a minion. If you're there's a minion and you're in the middle of reading the Torah, and there's exactly 10 people and 10 men, and one of them has to leave in the middle for whatever reason, and so there's a dying, then what happens?
That is a very good question. And we're going to get there later, I believe, in this tractate. What happens if you're in the middle of the Chazin's repetition of the Amida and your 10th guy walks out? What happens if you're in the middle of Kaddish and the 10th guy walks out? Same question about what you were saying. What happens if you're in the middle of reading the Torah and your 10th guy walks out? These are all very good questions. We're going to get to them. The short answer is depending on what is going on, you can finish, meaning depending on what it is that you're doing, sometimes you finish and sometimes you don't. I have to look back at the law regarding Torah reading. Do you complete the Aliyah and then stop, or do you finish the entire Torah reading? I have to look that up. Okay. Any other questions?
What is the translation of the Zimmer?
The translation of Zimun is invitation,
I
or
see.
prepare. The translation is probably preparing, preparedness, preparation.
Mm-hmm.
Preparation would probably be it. Okay, tomorrow at 11 a.m. we will be discussing. One second. This is a good one tomorrow. There it is. The Jewish people. What do they say? We've been kicked out of 100 lands. The people of Israel, a source of blessing from Laban's house to the nations of the world. How the presence of the Jewish people draws prosperity and positive influence to their host country. That'll be tomorrow at 11 a.m. here at Chabad. This week, Friday night, please mark your schedules for a wonderful evening Shabbat dinner. We will be starting at 5 o'clock with candle lighting and Friday night prayers, and 5:45 for a Shabbat meal. I have a question for you guys. If you have another minute.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So I was planning on having a Thanksgiving style, turkey and stuff like that. But someone else said to me, well, everyone's going to be having turkey on Thursday night. They're all going to be sick of turkey, so you should just do something else. What do you guys think?
What do you feel like making?
That's a good question.
Brisket?
I don't know what I feel like making.
Whatever you feel like, whatever you feel like is fine.
What is your wife like?
I like food. Any food is good.
No, what is Nahama like?
I'm like, that depends on what's going on. You know, chicken or meat or anything. What about Chaim? Do you have any opinion on the matter?
Same as almonds. I like everything.
Okay. I think it'll be fun. I've never made turkey before, so I think it might be fun to try it. But I'm also
Okay.
thinking to make something else on the side in case it doesn't turn out well.
Okay.
Turducken,
Sorry?
turducken,
What's that?
uh, turkey, a very large turkey with duck stuffed with a duck, and the duck is stuffed with a chicken, or the chicken stuffed with a duck. One or the other.
Wow.
I guess the chicken is bigger than a duck, right? Yeah. Okay. So a turkey stuffed with a chicken, which is stuffed with a duck.
Very interesting.
Hmm.
I don't think I'm ready to try that yet, but it sounds interesting. Okay. Thank you guys. So we'll see you tomorrow and we'll see you, God willing, Friday night.